Are we ready? No? Yeah. Okay. Do you remember you were? We're live? Okay, all right. Welcome everyone, we're live now, so we'll go ahead and call this regular Board of Education meeting to order. First item is to approve the agenda. Wants to modify anything? Okay, I move to approve the agenda. A motion and second to approve, all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0, okay. So thanks to some guests that we have in the audience. Appreciate you guys being here and also online if you're listening. First item we want to do tonight is to recognize a student or some students, one present, but we'll recognize the rest of them that aren't here. So Ian, I think, is that you?
You want me up there?
Wherever is fine.
I'm Ian Lane. I'm the Rose coach here in Clay Center. And we just wanted to recognize our state medalists. We took 13 kids to state, and we had a really good weekend. We had one senior, two juniors, and a handful of sophomores and freshmen. So we got a lot of great experiences and had a lot of great competitions. And I think there's one of them here, maybe. Should have actually tried maybe, but. We had Grant Smith. Grant Smith got 5th place in the 1600 meter run. We had Kylie Fitzenmeyer, who got 6th place in the 3200 meter. Lauren Smith got 2nd place in the 800. Tova Catlin got 5th place in the 400 meter dash. And then our girls 4x400 meter relay. Tova Catlin, Boston Craig, Tatum Johnston, and Lauren Smith got 5th place. We had a really good year, and they were a great group of kids to take to state, a great group all year, and they were just coachable and fun, and we just had a really good year. So
Congratulations. Yeah.
and thank you to the team from Wakefield. Thank you to Kingsley Smith, who got 8th place in the boys shot put from Wakefield. So as a freshman, that was quite the good job from him. So yeah.
Good job. Thank you. Thanks, Kylie. Okay, then that moves us on to the next, which is Citizens Open Forum. We have one patron who would like to speak tonight. Before that, we'll go ahead and just recite the information that we typically do when someone wants to present to the board. The board appreciates patrons taking time to talk with us about policies and procedures. We set aside this time every meeting to hear from the public. Your comments should be directed towards board policy or the procedures our administrators established to carry them out. This is not an appropriate time or place for patrons to make comments of a personal nature about any district employee or student. Persons making comments which violate the privacy rights of district employees and students will be asked to stop speaking or cease their remarks. If a patron or parent has a concern with one or more employees, the board will refer that person to the appropriate administrator, and the board will follow up at a future meeting. Persons speaking will be allowed 3 minutes each to express their opinions. In cases where a large number of patrons have similar opinions, a single speaker should be chosen to represent the larger group. Thank you for taking your time to discuss district business with the board. Mark Tidigan, topic of discussion is district boundaries.
Thank you, Madam President. Board members, Superintendent Nelson. Wonder if we can pass those around. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to visit with you about a proposed exchange of territory between USD 379 and 224. A little history might put it in perspective. In 1980, my wife and I decided to build a house on a tract of land that we own approximately halfway between Morganville and Clay Center. And our reason for wanting to be there is we wanted to educate our kids in the Morganville Elementary School, grade school at the time. And so we built a house. About a year or two later, we find out that we relied on some false information, or faulty information, I should say. And we weren't in 379, we were actually in 224. So I contacted them, Superintendent Chuck Stewart. I said, we'd like to be in 379. So he said, well, let's look into it. So he came out to the farm, brought Fred Zimmerman with him, who was transportation secretary at the time, or not superintendent, not secretary. He wanted to make sure it was a good bus route. And so Fred looked it over and he said, yeah, this will work for a bus route. I wasn't home, I was visiting with my wife. My wife says, well, then Superintendent Stewart said, well, I'll take this to Topeka, we'll get it transferred, and you'll be in 379 if that's what happened. So we transferred 280s, the one my wife and I own and the one my folks own, into 379. And just like we wanted, the kids had a wonderful educational experience in Morganville. Fast forward to now, and it's 40 years later, my wife and I were going to move to town. And our son Sean, his wife Nikki, and their family plan to move to our current home. Sean and Nikki have strong ties to USD 224. They both graduated from there. Nikki's dad just retired this last year from teaching there for many, many years. 3 of their children have been attending school in 224, and our son Sean currently serves on the board of 224 and would like to continue to do that if the patrons of the district choose to re-elect him. So what we are asking for now is to take the 280s that were moved from 224 to 379 and take them back to 224. And then it'd be where it was, and they, Sean and Nikki would be in the district where their kids want to go to school. In the spirit of cooperation and to minimize any financial effect on either board, we came up with the idea of, instead of just taking that land back, why don't we do an exchange? Similar property for similar property, house for house, ag land for ag land. And that's what we came up with. And so we looked a little bit and we came up with a couple pieces that are in 224 that could go into 379. On your sheet there, the tract we're really interested in is tract 1. It's where our house sits, to get it back into 224. There's a tract there, tract 3, that we discovered that actually has the assessed valuation extremely close. I don't know how it can come out that close. Sean has talked to the owners of that tract 3. They are willing to move into 379. And so that would work out. We'd really like to take tract 2 also, but if that skews the assessed valuation enough that it's a concern, we don't really have to have it. We can live without it. So that's kind of where we're at. We'd really like to do this, and I think we've come up with a proposal that should work with both districts and get the nuts and bolts work figured out. That's kind of where we're at. And I think, bigger term, longer term, big picture, in the next 10 years, we're going to see significant changes in school boundaries. And so I think it will be wise for all of us if we have school districts that their boards have a working relationship. And went through some of this before, because we're going to see some things come up. And with that, Madam President, I appreciate it and thank you, and I'll be willing to answer questions if there are any.
We're discussing it later in the agenda, so if you'd like to say, you're more than welcome.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is to receive communications. Looks like we have received a note, a thank you from Clay County. I'll just read it if you guys are okay with that. It says USD 379, thank you so much for your donation to the Golf Classic. We appreciate your continuous support to our Grow Clay County organization. Sincerely, the Grow team. Thank you to them. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Next, we have presentations. We have policy updates as the presentation for this evening.
Yeah, you bet. And so this is, KSB does this 2 times a year. They align new laws and new statute, and then they develop new policy that they then recommend school districts adopt so that you're in compliance with the new laws. And so I won't bore you with reading through all of them, but as a reminder, we always present 1 month, let them sit for 30 days. You guys make sure you have plenty of time to look over them, understand them, and then it would be the following month where you would generally approve those or make edits and then approve. And so there's 2 policies in here in particular that are came out of statute in the last 2 years that are going to affect us rather significantly. And I engaged with council a little bit to kind of look over these over the next 30 days and make sure they agree that what's written in policy aligns to what's, best in our best interest as a school district, and also fit our needs. And so, and I wish there was page numbers on here, but I'll start with JBC within the policy. And that was, it's not any significant changes to our policy, but more so aligns for the following policy. The one that starts with a big stop sign on it, because if we do adopt a policy, we'll have to do a publication and a public hearing on it, or at least that's what KSB is recommending that we do. So JBC is right ahead of JBCC. And so the biggest thing that we'll have to do there is on the second page of JBC, we will need to, for part-time enrollment, that was last year's statute, I believe. As I recall, they allowed or required to allow part-time enrollment, whereas before it was more of a local decision, and now it's not so much. But we do have the autonomy to establish a date. And so for when we would, it says part-time students other than those specified previously in this policy may enroll with the administration's permission if they complete all the paperwork in a timely fashion and are in attendance no later than. And so we can establish a date there. I don't think it's a huge deal, but we do need to decide what we're going to do there. Then if you go to the following page where it says stop prior to adopting policy JBCC, the board is required to call up and hold a hearing on the proposed policy. Then note it will have to provide a notice of such hearing, which will include the date, time, date, and place of the public hearing to be held. And so as we kind of start, I'm just going to throw out some ideas. And again, we'll have plenty of time with this policy. We don't have to have it adopted until January. So even if you would choose to adopt the rest of the policy updates, we could pull this one out and we could work out some of the details if we needed to. But my initial thought was we already hold a revenue neutral rate hearing and a budget hearing in August or September. We could, as an option to accomplish this, if our policy language is ready, we could add a third hearing to that date and have 3 hearings at the same meeting. That was just a thought. We already do that anyways, then it would fall in line with our publication. And then we could meet the deadlines for, has to run for 20 days, can't be any longer than 10 days between the hearing and the action and those kinds of things. So I'll just walk through a few things and then we can open it up for questions or discussions. So on the first page of JBCC, the new law requires the board to allow non-resident students to enroll and attend schools of the district if the board's capacity determination finds there are open seats for such students. And then we go through a bunch of definitions and what they define, key terms and individuals within the policy. And then on page 2 of JBCC, enrollment of non-resident students, we get through a few more definitions, and then the policy reads, the superintendent or designee has the responsibility for studying capacity in each school of the school district and at each grade level within each school, and for making recommendations to the board regarding the district's capacity to accept non-resident students. And I'll skip down a little bit and just kind of hit the highlights. So it says we shall develop recommendations on capacity and classroom student to teacher ratios in each grade level in each school serving kindergarten students and students in grades 1 through 8. And then it gives some ideas on what recommendations should be based on, but it says not limited to, but the following factors, and you guys can read those and need to bore you. And then it separates it a little bit for grades 9 through 12. And I think the biggest difference there is it specifies demand for particular courses or programming because it's different within elementary and secondary.
So another variable here is the athletic, the JH policy. Those two could overlap because you have a child who wants to come enroll in band.
And so then we would have to set a limit based on,
My understanding of the non-public school athletic policy is it's
Is it not-
it's not dependent upon capacity.
city.
Mhm. That's my understanding, but we can certainly look more into it. I don't think that's the intention of the law. But we can look
I would
into it.
like you to look into that, because I don't know how we can set a limit, but then any non-student can just, every single person could enroll in band, for instance.
I'll
So
just
that
agree
seems
with
to be
you,
when I was reading the policy, I said, okay. But how does JH work with that? So if you could,
but Yeah, we'll dig into that a
Dig
little
into
bit
that.
for sure. So on page 3, it says honor before May 1st of each year. Superintendent shall present recommendations concerning capacity and student to teacher ratios to the board for adoption or modification for each grade level in the building of the district or the next succeeding school year. Which is a little strange. Like I was trying to envision us doing this next year in May. We don't even know what our kindergarten class size is gonna be yet. But we're gonna have to set capacity limits, and that's gonna be a challenge we're gonna have to work through on how do you set capacity and roll capacity. And one might think, oh, well, you know what your capacity is gonna be. Well, from year to year, we may, depending on enrollment, add a section of a grade, take away a section of a grade, and we just don't know what we'll have capacity for because we may make changes in the month of especially July. So something to think about. So honor before June 1st of each year, we shall publish the number of open seats available to non-resident students in each grade level for each building for the next succeeding school year on the district's website. From June 1 through June 30, we'll accept applications. If the applications for a grade level in school building is less than the number of available seats for the grade level in that school building, the non-resident student shall be accepted for enrollment and attendance at the school district except as provided below for non-resident students. So if the number of applications for the grade level is greater than the number of seats available in the building, administration shall randomly select non-resident students using a confidential lottery process. This shall be completed on or before July 15th of each year. Then if we skip down just a little bit, subject to having capacity to enroll non-resident students, the district shall give priority in enrollment to the following non-resident students who shall receive open seats without necessity of being selected through the open seat lottery. A sibling of a non-resident student who is accepted to enroll in the district prior. So if you have a sibling, even though your capacity, if your capacity level, you would give priority to somebody who had a sibling in the school district. A non-resident student who is a military student as defined as that statute that's listed. Any child who's in custody of the Department for Children and Families. They do have one for employees of the district. So if the teacher and the family live outside of our boundaries, but come to school here, priority could be given to them. Homelessness, any students who are experiencing homelessness shall be permitted to enroll and attend school district of origin, regardless of those. And then we get into other provisions of the policy. The school district cannot charge tuition or fees to any non-resident student who transfers to the district pursuant to this policy, except fees that are otherwise charged to every student enrolled. So you can only charge a fee if you charge in district students. Accept or deny any non-resident student transfer based on and this is, we may not, based on ethnicity, national origin, gender, income level, disability condition, proficiency in English language or measure of achievement, aptitude, or athletic ability. The district, by virtue of being a receiving school district of a non-resident student, shall not be required to provide transportation. And then it goes on to say, however, you can, if you have room and you have a spot. Another caveat. It proceeds to say some things that we shall not do is deny a student for services related through a student's individualized education program or accommodation pursuant to the student's by section 504 plan. And spaces available on that's the transportation piece. And it does clarify under CASA eligibility, nothing in this policy or state law shall exempt a non-resident student who transfers into the district from the requirements of CASA. So it's basically both policies align there, saying any student that's participating regardless of non-resident or attending a homeschool or private school, they're still required to follow CASA rules. It also proceeds to say that the superintendent shall submit or have submitted to KSDE this policy, the number of non-resident student transfers approved and denied in each grade level, whether the denials were based on capacity or in accordance with all these terms required. Non-resident student who has been accepted for enrollment and attendance at the district school shall be permitted to continue enrollment and attendance in the district until such student graduates from high school, reaches the age of 21.
So once they're in, they're in.
Correct.
Unless they don't, at least they could stand.
And there's a few caveats for good standing. And that's where this comes in, and it's a little vague, and where Dusty and I've had some conversations on how much autonomy we can have within that. And so Dusty's gonna be looking at that here next month and see where we stand there. But as specified,
Can't we treat them like an out of district student? I mean, if you get an out of district student and they're upstanding when they get in, but then all of a sudden they're not. We can say, we can say,
Yeah, they're
hey,
not in good
you're
standing.
gone.
that's where it gets pretty specific, and that's where I've asked council to compare what the law actually says to what policies written. To see if we have any, how much
JH part, if they don't abide by CASA rules, they're out.
right?
Right.
I mean, as far as that goes.
Yep. And so it says, non-resident students have I read that, regardless of capacity to accept non-resident students, a non-resident student's grade level or in the student's designated school or program, an individual student may be denied continued enrollment for not being in good standing. And then on page 4, it defines good standing, and it says a student meeting one or more of the following criteria shall automatically be deemed not in good standing and may be denied. So it has an attendance clause, 90% attendance rate or less would classify them. Non-resident student or parents provide false information. Non-resident students not resident of Kansas. The student is currently under a period of suspension or expulsion from any Kansas school district, and such suspension or expulsion will not expire until the end of the year has begun. The student has had 3 or more out of school suspensions in the current year, excluding suspensions for a manifestation determination determined to be a manifestation of the student's disability. And so this would be, the student has an IEP, they get suspended for more than 10 days, then we have to hold a manifestation hearing. And if that team determines that the behavior was a manifestation of the student's disability, then we would not be required to, we would not be allowed to deny them enrollment to our school district. And the last one is the student has been given a long-term suspension or expulsion by the district in the current school year. It's a long-term.
So it does say in the application process though, so what is the state advising that application process looks like?
Well, there's even a
Right, is
piece,
there-
once you're in, you don't have to apply again.
Right,
But
but
the application process is what?
We
So-
have an out-of-district transfer
Application.
form or
But we-
application form that families fill out.
because it does say then if it's false, if there's false information provided.
And so
Okay.
a typical
But
process
then
right
it
now,
sounds like from this other list, there, we would have to give weighting to some kids. So we would have to come up with a,
depending on when we set our capacity.
If we've met our capacity,
right,
if not,
if not,
no, there's no waiting.
Okay.
Other than that.
Separate training station. We have to take that. We get that waiting.
Not
Well,
for an out of district.
not
student.
for an out of,
Says here, right here, it says people attending school in receiving district will be counted as regular enrolled, says. For receiving school finance except for the transportation rate component of the law,
Yeah, you don't get paid to transport.
so you don't get it at all.
You don't get it at all, even if you
That's my
pick them up
understanding.
in district.
That's my understanding. And so right now, we don't transport out of district students unless they'll
Right.
meet us at a boundary or a road that we already drive on or along, and we have room on the bus. And so that's always been up to our transportation director, and he determines, do we have a bus going on in that vicinity? Do we have room and do we have time on the route? And if we do, the parent will sometimes meet us at the border. And then they can hop on a bus, but if we don't have room, then we don't. And I think policy, we're still covered in some other areas in that aspect. And so a traditional process as it stands now, we deny very few out of district students anyways, and it pretty much aligns with what's written, minus a few other things, but a family would submit that out of district application. It goes to the building principal, then the building principal does basically reference checks and calls the school district from where the student's coming from to find out if they are in good standing or are not. And then would make that recommendation. If they sign that form comes up here. Then if it involves transportation, it goes to the transportation office, and then they decide if they're going to have the ability and or space to do that or not. And then the family's notified. We send them a letter on whether or not they're accepted or not.
and right now, when do they receive that letter?
It's written in policy. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's July something, I believe.
We would typically turn it in May. Usually on May 1st, our secretaries start sending out the forms to the current ones and district transfers too.
And the day these policy updates came out, I think last Tuesday. And so as we've talked with other districts, everyone's sifting through, processing. Haven't seen what some of these things might look like from Keisha and what everybody else is gonna do. And so, like I said, this one I would anticipate not being ready for approval next month, probably yet. But continuing to gather information and see what other districts are gonna do.
Does anybody have any things they want information on for the next meeting? So Mr. Nelson and team can go.
Is there a max, like, if you have to guess how many, like, you just say 1,400 students, or that's not allowed? Like, what restrictions you gotta do, like, grades?
Per grade level per building.
Like 10% more in every grade level, and
It's so different depending on the year. I think a great example this year is Wakefield Kindergarten, where they're sitting at 27 and even one or two more at different points in the year. And, I would never you wouldn't want to set a capacity that high, but when they're 1 year anomalies, sometimes you do those things knowing that it's an anomaly and you're going to work through. We added an aide to help with the class and did some different things. But if we would have set that capacity,
At 25, that would still be a number that we wouldn't have anticipated.
Can we ask Brett if we can set capacities by grade band? So that gives us
We can set them every
flexibility
year.
where if we need 3 sections in a grade level, but 5 in another, we can move around. Maybe see if we could set it by grade.
we kind of did that with that. What was
Like,
last year's sophomore class was always huge, so it's always been big.
Maybe 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah. Or
Just
something like
that's
that.
what you're.
Just to give you guys information on what if that could look like.
and a question that I haven't been able to answer yet has been a definitive answer on if you set a capacity at a certain grade level as X and a family moves in across the street, does that mean you have to deny that in-district family a seat too? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that we need to,
No, we need to know.
I think we should have it in policy.
Understand I really don't understand what the value of this is. For any district across the state.
Well, I'm thinking in our metropolitan districts, it is going to be a much bigger issue when you have Olathe and Shawnee Mission and DeSoto and Gardner Edgerton,
Big
them all,
Possible issue for
Yeah.
us.
I'm
I
just
mean-
thinking, you know, Wichita and.
What is there,
those-
15 high schools in Wichita?
Yeah.
I
I'm
mean, you think
thinking,
about that. I mean, God, I could go over here and play
it's not that
football
it's not a
because
big
they're
issue
real
for
good.
us, but I'm thinking, the way I'm feeling is, let's kind of see what some of these other districts dip their toe into it, because we don't have to have an answer till January, correct?
That's my understanding, January 1, yeah.
I wonder too, if we have to set the building or do we have to set the grade for the district? So let's say we were gonna do 5 sections of kindergarten and we see that we get 30 on Wakefield, can we say, all right, we need 5 of them shifting up to Play Center, so we can do by grade band and across buildings.
I just think of how many years we've moved people around or added aides, or maybe it's a ratio thing. It just would be nice to give you guys a lot of options that have a little more flexibility, because like Andy said, look at certain classes that from 110 down to 80 in Clay,
Yeah.
and then, you know, the kindergarten 27, and then what's next? I mean, they just fluctuate so much.
And we have a distinct pattern of big classes, small
I
classes.
mean, 10% for a class of 27 is only 2 kiddos, right? So that's not nearly enough. We need. It's just, we're not gonna, I mean, this is a guessing game that none of us are gonna get right. But the intent of this, wasn't it, so that you wouldn't discriminate against kids that are being coming in and handpick who you invite in the district and who you don't? I mean, that's the basis of it, right? That we don't say, like, these are the people, it's not really an issue here.
My opinion is it's a version of school choice, and this was a way to get a modified voucher ESA type program. That's my opinion, is it's.
Well, yeah, it's not gonna affect this like it's gonna affect the big, I mean, I could see Kansas City, Wichita, it's gonna affect, yeah, Topeka. And, you know, some of Topeka, the end of like Lawrence, they only got 2 high schools, Manhattan got 1 high school, so, you know.
This lets those kids go to rural districts around them.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you know, there's already kids that's why Raleigh County's enrollment's what it is, because people take their kids out of Manhattan, put them in Riley County. I mean, Riley County school bus stops at Bluebell Nursery. So, you know, it's kind of hard not to take your kid to the bus, you know, as far as that goes.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that we have it somehow in our wording that we're not gonna deny somebody. I don't think that's the focus though, to deny somebody that's actually gonna reside in our district. It's more for who's coming
Non-resident,
outside. So if they move,
But if they met
Capacity, then
unless that's not included in the statute.
that
So
would
like,
be something I would wanna ask about, that, so you're not denying a family that moves in halfway through the school year and we're at capacity.
So Deb, the way I understand it is if we had set the capacity at Wakefield at 25, which would be a very large class, but it did happen this year.
Right.
Then there would be a lottery and 2 of those students would have had to be bused up to Play Center.
Which
That's-
in
that's
our
the way
district,
The policy reads.
that sounds like an option, but if it's another district and they don't have another school to ship them to, what do they do? So my
Yeah.
feeling is like, we can't accept any more out of our district
we'll have to
students, but if they live within our district, they should still be able to come no matter what the capacity level is. We're just not accepting any more out of district students.
Okay.
But I think we need to have it worded somehow like that, because like, yeah.
Yeah, we have to follow this.
For sure.
Statute, those will have to check.
I got a list here and we'll look on that.
Get into it.
Any other thoughts or comments on that one? If you would hop to JH. And so this one technically does go into, my understanding is we go into effect of July of this year. And it's kind of been, I think in statute, it was titled something along the lines of non-public school athletes, I think was how it was worded in the statute that was passed. And so I've gone through and made some highlights here too. This is one that we'll have to deal with, like I said, for this school year. And so our secondary principals and admin team met and kind of worked through some of the details of what our process will look like to deal with this new piece, but I'll kind of hit the highlights and then we can open it up for discussion. And so essentially, this is a new law, which now we are adopting into policy. If you adopt it, would be that we are required to allow non-public school students to participate in activities and athletics with really no, very few caveats to either, accepting or not allowing. It's basically, we will accept them and they will be allowed to pay, and we will not be able to charge them any fee or cost that's not charged to any already enrolled student. And so, I'll just, instead of participation in Kansas State High School Activities Association, any student meeting the following requirements shall be permitted to participate in any district activities that are regulated, supervised, promoted, and developed by the Kansas State High School Activities Association. The requirements include, of course, being a resident of a school district. That's always been in our policy. Being enrolled and attending a non-public elementary or secondary school. So essentially, any accredited, non-accredited, any school that any family is going to, they are required to be allowed to participate in any activities and athletics. They do have to comply with health certification, shot requirements. They do have to meet applicable age and eligibility requirements by CASA. Paying fees required by the district for participation in such activity, if such fees are generally imposed upon all other students who participate in the activity. They do have to reside in the boundary. Any student attending a home school, this is the second part to it, any student attending a home school who is a resident of the district and seeks to participate in a CASA activity sponsored by the district shall be deemed to meet any academic eligibility requirements established by CASA for participation in such activity. They'd have to maintain satisfactory progress towards achievement or promotion to the next grade level, and the parent, teacher, or organization that provides instruction to students submits an affidavit or transcript to CASA indicating the student meets these academic eligibility requirements. We are anticipating that CASA will come out with more guidance as it relates to this affidavit or whatever that might be. So we're waiting on that. Upon submission of this, the student attending a homeschool shall be deemed to meet any academic eligibility requirements established by CASA and shall retain such academic eligibility during the activity season for which it was submitted. The board may require a student who participates in an activity pursuant to this policy to enroll or complete a particular course as a condition of participation. Best example is band. In order to participate in band, you're required to be enrolled in the class. We have several others, but that's the most well-known one. So we would, if a homeschooled family wanted their child to participate in band, we would require that they enroll and attend the class within the school building in order to be eligible. But again, we can't charge them any fees for band equipment or anything like that. And our enrolled students are charged a fee for those kinds of things. And so
Why can't you charge them a fee?
as we can.
It says only if other students are not charged that fee.
And that's another thing that's a great point. So ours is listed as like a textbook fee, but it goes to all of those things. So it may be that we need to.
So band is not separate like for what other,
No. Or flat fee.
it's a flat fee for band.
So the question would be, could we prorate?
It's a flat fee for textbooks.
Yeah.
Right, some of that is-
So none of that, so we don't charge any more if you're out the band.
No, the only band, you're right, the band fees are.
There's band fees and
You raise
instrument
profits.
fees and,
And your consumable book.
right, so those you can charge them for. Because you're charging other students the same fee.
So if we charge the other kids, we can charge them. I think the question is the flat textbook fee. Do we
Yeah, I can
prorate
see.
that out and say that's worth 1/7 of their day or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, you
I
could,
would
you
say
could.
it's
If they're enrolled, do you get FTE for them?
Potentially a portion of an
So like if they
FTE.
were just band, you could, but you could not if they were just a football participant or a basketball.
They
participant.
have to have a butt in the seat the day before and a day after September 20th to be able to.
Gotcha. Even if they're there just for one class.
So, yeah. Where is that line drawn? There's certain Keisha activities, band forensics. Fire is not a Keisha activity. So,
Definitely.
No,
I mean, it's listed on their website, whatever they sponsor and are supervised over would be out.
and I think the difference in Clay, Keisha is 7-12, where Wakefield has some 6th grade opportunities for athletics,
right,
basketball,
track,
volleyball, and track.
volleyball.
well,
So,
I mean, non-athletic says debate. Music, piano, spelling, speech and drama, spirit activities and student council.
So Keisha has a rule on transfer students that they can't participate for a certain amount of time after they transfer in. Does that apply to homeschool kids who move into their?
Doesn't sound like it, but that's another question that we have and have been, so, you know, they're exempt if they start as a 7th grader or a 9th grader. You can move, not and have a, you know,
Start.
and start fresh and not have to sit out without a bona fide move. But if they come from a homeschool to participate with us, it would be our initial interpretation that there be no,
Right. Yeah.
I mean-
Set out time frame.
we
Actually,
haven't
I
seen.
think that would be something to further investigate because I think the larger metropolitan areas would greatly affect them. Thinking of, let's just say you have a superstar basketball player. And then he wants to transfer to play for XYZ high school.
Now, if they were
And then all of a sudden he
participating,
goes homeschool.
well, I think that's where. Is there a period of time in between
Right,
playing at one high school versus coming to another one?
I think it would be worth asking more questions.
Yeah, I'd de-enroll on homeschooling for 2 weeks.
I'm homeschooling and then,
But you would still have your district boundary
You
guide.
still have your district boundary guideline, you
So you
still
don't
have your
get the
bona fide
homeschool,
move
you still
guideline.
look at- Yeah, so I think you would still be,
Mhm.
doesn't matter.
in
There
fact,
you
we
come.
need to look at, you know, once they're in high school, they only have so many years of eligibility, and so if you come,
That's a Keisha rule, so they're
Right.
already bound to Keisha rule.
and I know that, but when you come. If
I
you,
know
the
what
way
you're
our
saying.
policy reads, if you're coming from non-accredited school, we place you in your grade level, right? So we're just gonna have to keep track, if a kid comes in saying, and age-wise, they line up with freshman year. Which I think that'll probably come into some of what Keisha guidelines will be, but just be aware, like, what credits are you earning from wherever? And what grade level are you, because you still only have so many years of
I know.
eligibility, and then the age piece kicks in too, so that's just.
The
things
case,
to watch.
in the case of rule, you have to be enrolled at least 5 classes that
Correct.
are.
Yeah, and so is what that
So
was.
my thing is, if a homeschool student's only taking 2 classes, it's gonna be kind of hard, they're not gonna be able to participate because they don't meet the case rule.
So all they have to do is fill out on an Excel sheet, math, reading, science.
Doesn't have to
Yeah,
be-
but they have to send in their transcript to get approved. And if they don't show that they're taking that,
My past experience with enrolling homeschool students, their transcript is oftentimes whoever's doing their homeschool. Just a handwritten list of math, science, ELA, reading, attendance is good, on track to the next grade, and that's what we have to accept.
One thing we did add to our list for our high school ADs to loop in the counselors when kids are coming and asking questions, because depending on your future, if you are seeking something post-secondary with your sport, NCAA clearinghouse has its rules as well.
Right.
And many times the homeschool non-accredited credits don't count towards your clearinghouse. And so just want to make sure that might not matter to a family, but it might matter to some. And so just making sure they're aware of the that NCAA clearinghouse rules too, so. Don't want them to jeopardize something.
I guess from Jeff's point though, it wouldn't. It would be in good faith of our part to double check what that requirement is for a grade standpoint. We could see, because it does say they have to make satisfactory progress towards achievement.
But they don't have to like pass the standardized test.
Correct.
They just have to have somebody saying that they're making progress.
It's almost better than a college portal. Really. At least you gotta be accepted by them.
So those are the highlights, and I have the list of questions, and we'll work on those for you guys and bring them back next month. Is there any other questions for the remaining policies that are in?
More coming next month. So then we'll move to positive board comments. Do you have anything they want to share?
I wanted to congratulate the CCPHS choir and band for the almost 2,000 grants in last week. It's been great, and it was, they had a great time and a successful trip. I'm glad they had that opportunity.
A fun new addition for the music department. And I just wanted to congratulate the forensics, speech and drama people that are currently in Phoenix right now for their national competition. I hope they're having a great time right now, and safe travels.
Yes.
Congratulations to the weight lifting competitions as well. I saw some winners of their age divisions, and I remember Noah Freeman was one of them for his weight division, but there was another one. I can't think of who it was, and I think there's some place center.
Aaron Flicker, one hurt.
Some of those other little mentioned sports that we participate in, and the shooting sports kind of has been very successful.
And it's in consent agenda, normally, but I did want to make a mention that, you know, it's always nice to read, the board reports from the schools and the principals, and the annual report was in there this week or this month. And they specifically talked about, the site council and the meetings that the site council has once a month with the individual buildings. I think that that's important for everyone to know that that information is out there. There's meetings that occur at each individual building level with lots of different patrons, teachers, administration. And so that's a good way for the community to check back and see what's going on in our schools. So if you're interested, please be certain to check those out, and they're available in the board reports and our information. That's a good one. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Move on then to the consent agenda. How many of those items?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. A motion and a second to approve. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Then on to reports. Anybody have a board report you'd like to update anybody on today? That will move then to an Austin superintendent report.
Don't have a big list today, but I just thought I'd get you up to date on some of the summer projects that are happening and are going to happen this summer. The flooring company, where are they at now, Gregor?
They are supposed to be getting the material, I think the 17th. They have the high school library carpeted in the carpet. Looks really good.
So they'll be kind of working their way through the rest of the summer. The tennis courts were finished. Are they
Yeah,
complete yet?
I think
Friday they'll be done. And so, if you haven't seen those, take a look. They turned out really nice and they did a nice job. And even better that it came in significantly under budget, so that's always a positive thing. The sidewalks throughout the district, they will start, I think, is it the 12th, maybe? Maybe today, this week, they'll be here soon. And they're here for about a week or two, and then they take a little break, and then they'll be back in July, and so they'll be finished up by the end of the month. At the stadium here in town, they put the press box up today. The concrete contractor's finishing up. Is he gonna be done today, Craig? They'll be finished today, and they'll finish some site work and grading. Lighting, so we got lots of lights throughout the district that we need to take care of. Some from the storm, some from just being, bulbs out here and there at both Wakefield and Clay Center. So those will be happening this summer. Both scoreboards are here to arrive later in early August, and the sign installers on schedule to come get those installed. So they should be up and ready to go for football season. Later on in the agenda this evening, you have the RFP for the boiler at the middle school. And those have been ordered, and I think lead times on at least a part of them is the 1st of August. And that's a job they feel like they can do even when we're in school. So they are fairly confident that we'll be up and running for heating season. And so that's kind of the highlights of summer projects. Lots of painting, lots of cleaning. This will be the last year that our custodial staff have to strip and wax a lot of the tile floor. And so that will save a tremendous amount of maintenance and effort kind of in the summers. And so it'll be a good thing for them. Throughout the district, I think we'll only have a handful of floors left when we're done. Close out, kind of just hit the highlights of this. As you guys know, this is a busy time for board meetings and for our staff here in the next 2 to 3 months. Closeout has gone fairly well so far. They've been working on getting those encumbrances down because they're a bear when we're transferring over fiscal years. And so the business office has been doing a good job working through those. We are scheduled to attend a budget workshop on June 22nd in Topeka. Hopefully the software is live around that time period. It generally is within that week. And because of the newer, I can't remember if this is year 2 or year 3, because of the revenue neutral, we do have to have that to the county by July 20th. And so to have that done, it really does require that we have a majority of the budget software complete. Otherwise, we don't know where we will end up as it relates to the information that requires. And so that means our new target now is our July meeting to have a lot of that prepared. And I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but we have not received back, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, property casualty insurance estimates yet. We have some preliminary information from the pool, but we meet with them on Wednesday for them to walk us through what that entails so that we can be prepared to present that to you, hopefully at a late June special board meeting on the 26th. We today received an email from IMA. They requested a little bit more information from us related to our data. And so we are fairly confident that the 26th will be safe to have hopefully a couple of options for you to look at and consider and approve, because we have to have insurance in place by July 1st. And so I don't know if you want to talk about the 26th now, or if you want to wait till, I think it's on the agenda a little bit later, so we can do that here in a little bit. And so negotiations, we've been meeting, it's been going really well. I think it's going to come down to what can we afford in regards to salary and compensation for all of our employees. And we really can't do that until we know how much insurance is going to cost. I think we're closer to knowing, for lack of better terms, a ballpark number of where we're going to end, or where we can expect to end with. But again, it's highly dependent upon that number, because I know lots of my colleagues around and aren't even changing insurance companies, are taking on 40 and 50% increases. And so it'll be a big number and we'll just have to budget it in and work with it. And so looking ahead, if we do that on the 26th, there's a chance on the 26th, we could have end of the year transfers ready for your approval. And if we could get that done, that would set us up nicely to be able to be prepared and have a solid preliminary budget presentation for you in July. We've kind of talked with the association about the timeline, and if we meet on the 26th, you guys give final approval to compensation. If that can all be timed right, then hopefully we can ratify at the July meeting. And then if we ratified at the July meeting, we wouldn't have to do any retro pay based on whatever you guys approved, because that would be in time for the payroll file to go out to our employees, so that we didn't have to do any retro pay for whatever the compensation package is that you guys are approved. A lot of stars have to align, but I think it can be done if we can do. And then that should allow us in July to get the classified handbook approved. With the compensation, all other staff compensation. And again, I put soft close out. It could just depends on how much we can get done and whether or not we can get a soft close out and transfer approved at the 26th or the July, either meeting, it'd be fine. And then in August, we'd of course, like we do every year, we'd give that final budget presentation. And then in that time period between August and September, we publish all the required publications, your budget, your revenue neutral, and possibly the open enrollment policy information if we have that ready. And then that would hopefully set us up to in September then to hold that budget hearing, revenue neutral hearing, maybe an open enrollment hearing, and then approve the budget. So, you guys see anything I'm missing there? Or we need to be a busy summer, but get it done.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Nelson? Okay, thank you. Then on to Anita's report. Some information here. Anything you want to share? Any questions for Anita?
Yeah, some of those positions, which were positive, we've had some more pairs at the high school. If you know anybody interested there, we're down to two people there and 3 to fill for sure and possibly 1 more. And then 2 we have at Blue Valley, but we filled everything else. We interviewed 4 people last week and got them all hired due to your approval tonight. So, need some more.
I like your incentives for your awesome attendance.
You know,
Learners. I think that's pretty
we saw
cool.
improvement every single 9 weeks, so it's a lot of work. A lot of work, but we're gonna continue doing it next year.
Seems like it's working though.
Yeah.
It is working. We're kind of, took a couple times and then it's like, but then you think over Christmas, there's a lot of people gone, but we still saw an increase. So we're gonna keep doing
Great. Okay. Right, thank you. So then that moves us to the Director of Curriculum Instruction report with Jacqueline.
Sure. I just wanted to, I'm gonna jump up on the screen here in a minute. Our teachers, some of them have started using their Flex Day. Just a reminder, that's 1 day, that's as an instructional or building goal focus. They don't do that by themselves. They do that with somebody else, or an approved PD, especially if you can work in isolation, but some of them have been working on that. Our elementary and secondary English teachers did their curriculum startup and it went well in late May. They worked really hard that day trying to match up their standards and looking at their data needs that they had and have started mapping. I've been watching some of their work over the summer, the last few weeks, so you can tell what grade levels put in their flex time, which has been good to see. We have a couple new teachers teaching personal finance next year. And so we arranged for some PD for them just online. It's kind of just a list and they get to pick when they want to take it. And so they'll be doing that. And this Friday, we have some secondary math teachers working on IXL math. It's a online more where they can assign a specific skill that kid needs to work on. So they'll be going through that training. Our PD calendar for next year is attached in there, and something I want to show you. We did this the last 5 years, but we reset it for this year. That every year we list the professional learning. We have to turn in our PD plan with our district improvement process. And so we list the description here, and then we have a category here, like what state board outcome is that working towards, and then what goal area is it focused on? And it just helps us kind of have an overview of what we've been focusing on, making sure we're giving every area focus. We are working on our island sessions at kickoff. That's kind of later down in here. We're going to start our kickoff morning. We have introductions. We have a guest speaker, and I will tell you that it is our CCCHS graduate, Brian Skinner, who is currently the Kansas Teacher of the Year. So he will be coming to give our kickoff keynote, which is awesome. So that will be fun. And then we have 2 sessions, and the staff get to pick what they go to. We offer a variety of sessions. We are going to put some specific ones in there related to family engagement and attendance strategies, because that is something we want to improve on. We have, Brian is going to stay and share. He is a former special ed teacher and was a language arts teacher as well. So he's going to stay and do a couple sessions as well. We have some staff self-care and some other, we offer a yoga session usually transportation and maintenance have meetings too. So there's a variety of things we offer, and then we'll have lunch and then dismiss the buildings back for their building organizational. So I put on here just a reminder, I'll ask you at the July meeting, but want to know if, as many of you that want to come on the 10th, either for the welcome or for the lunch or for both, either way, will be great. And as far as our summer learning, we have about 387 elementary kids signed up for some portion of summer learning. And that has started off really well. And it's not without hiccups. There's always hiccups. It's summer and everybody has a little bit of crazy schedules and whatnot, but a lot of fun learning going on in the buildings for sure. Our middle school STEM program, we have a couple of kids at Wakeville participating and about 20 at Place Center Middle School. And that is hosted through K-State. It is virtual, but I went in and sat by some of the kids while they're doing it, and she's online Zoom, like teaching, but like a kid I was with at Wakeville last week, he was in a math one. And so he had a deck of cards and he was, going along with what she was doing there. And so it's pretty interactive too. So that's been neat to see the kids participate in. And then our high school credit recovery, just a report for you guys in May, 49.5 credits were earned. And that was out of 31 students. So some earned multiple credits. And then there was 4 credits that were started that they should be able to finish that in the fall at some point. So, and just a reminder, that 40%, that 40 to 59 is who had options for credit recovery, and some of them had to do more, obviously, if you're in that 40% range versus the 50% range. So I wanted to also show you some of our screening data. So just a reminder, our Ames Web Screener, we've actually been using this in our elementary for almost 15 years, but screening K-12 for the last 3 years, we're staying pretty consistent, we're right there about the same. Something we're a little bit down from the year before. Kids change, we move them into different grade bands, obviously from that, but I think something to point out is it's never too late to help the kids learn to read, and you can see that by our percentages and the last 2 years, we're at 98 to 99% of our seniors as they graduate can meet that benchmark. So I don't break it down by grade level. I do on my own side, but on our data dashboard, I break it down by grade band. And so
Now, is that a district benchmark or is that a national
national
benchmark?
benchmark.
Okay,
Based off of national norms. Yeah. And so kindergarten and first grade have a lot of subtests that they give the kids, and there's one that we particularly look at because it indicates future reading. But then starting at second grade, it's that oral reading fluency and comprehension kind of all put together. Second grade through 12th grade. And, it all kind of ties back to our focus on the science of reading, and there are some strategies that we've put into core as well as into intervention. We're really seeing some gains from some individual kids, and this is an area we are focusing on in our next KISA plans, so.
right, we use this data to then see,
Yeah, see how we're doing.
student XYZ needs this additional support.
So. Wanted to share that with you, and I think the other thing I have is really to graduation requirements, which is actually later in the meeting, so. Questions for Jacqueline?
Thank you. Then we'll move to the principal report. I know I wanted to say thank you earlier in positive comments. I just think it's important to thank them for the work there, but we are going to talk about them specifically. So you want to present? If Jacqueline, if you're going to present, I don't think the principal.
So a few years ago, we changed when we did handbooks, you guys kind of wanted as I recall, to a summary of what any changes, and that's the first page of every handbook with any changes. So you don't have to read through the entire thing. You can click on each one and see what the specific changes are. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about those. There is just full disclaimer, if there's any significant changes, we'll have to make sure we go through the policies related to the two that we spoke about tonight and make sure that any correlation get changed over. And so that may be a month in the rear, depending on some of the answers to the questions that you guys had tonight and how our policy end up getting approved. There may be some tweaks to the handbooks.
And then also too, anybody have any questions or comments about any of the state council reports?
I really do appreciate the information. I like the test scores results that are in there as well. And it's really getting some good data from the schools and see what progress we've been making.
Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself.
Right.
Trying to-
You're just working on it. What did you say?
I appreciate the data that is in these reports, and really being able to take time and encourage everyone to take a look and see what's happening in all of the schools in our district. Some great information.
Well, and it kind of gets in the weeds too, right? The data celebrations, I mean, each one of the schools does list some of that information as well, or most of them do. So I think that's important, kind of in line with what Jacqueline was sharing. We take that very seriously. Obviously with the KISA model, it's important, but just beyond that, it matters. So
It shows that we're doing well for our children.
So some pretty cool stats in there as well, and just some highlights overall for the year. So takes a lot of time and effort to put that report together. Okay, so then moving on to discussion of business
Ready for
items,
that now?
which is A, yeah, which you already briefly touched on.
Yeah, we're happy to take any questions.
There.
And do we need a motion to approve the staff handbook?
Generally, yes, you do.
Yep, if you're ready. Yep.
Seeing no questions, I move to approve the staff handbooks as presented for the 2023-2024 school year.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Then on to the boiler labor RFP. Labor piece. Why don't you take that? Anybody have any questions? I guess it's kind of mentioned in his superintendent report as well. So,
We have the equipment ordered.
right,
We have received a bid from Central Mechanical.
just one bid.
One bid.
Yep. So with the boiler and the labor also too, comes in under what we originally budgeted as well. Pretty significant impact.
What are the boilers gonna be, or do you know? I can't remember what you said.
One had an 8-week, the boilers themselves were at an 8-week lead time from April, and then the pumps were, I think, August. So. And it's probably appropriate here, as you know, we budgeted to finish the electronic door access across the district as a part of the capital outlay plan. Like everything, things are going up in price, and so it's a little bit more than what we budgeted, but when it comes time for it, we're hoping we can use what we saved from budgeted from this project. The extra that's gonna cost for the doors, we can put towards the doors. Hopefully we'll have more information on that in July, but we did submit to the school safety grant that comes out once a year. It paid about $28,000 worth of the first round of doors. So we submitted for that again. And so hopefully July, we would know on that and be able to come to you for approval on the second half of that door phase, what we're calling phase 2 of the electronic door accesses. And hopefully we'll get some grant money for that.
I move to give final approval to accept the bid for the installation of the boiler equipment and pumps at CCCMS from Central Mechanical Construction in the amount of $110,200.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as recommended. Further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, next item is the district insurance update.
So we added this to the agenda last week in the event we had more information for tonight. I've already kind of hit on timeline, what we're thinking for that, hoping you guys set a special meeting date for later in the month. Again, our first meeting with one of the pools is going to be Wednesday, and then hopefully the week after the other one, and then we'll be able to gather that information and have it ready for you on June 26th. So not a lot here.
All right, then we'll move on to graduation requirements.
Okay, I don't know if you'll remember at the last meeting, we shared with you 2 options, and our team wanted to get back together and discuss things a little further, and so we did. Couple things we really talked about is, we really looked at that technology credit. That's what we were hung up on. Again, we talked about the history, how it originally started out as a keyboarding credit and kind of continued to build. It has provided real good exposure for kids, and I would say a lot of them, when they take one of the technology classes from one of our teachers that are trained in there, they come out with some really good skills that other teachers maybe they just don't have that background. Just basic operating knowledge, troubleshooting, problem solving. And they also kind of almost more of a technology literacy, like, because a lot of them are getting it through graphic design, and you might, if a kid's trying to sell themselves, whether it be through even a resume or maybe a video, something they want to submit to an employer, there's definitely some skills that they're learning in those classes that are helping them next level. That was kind of part of our discussion that we came around to with our task force. So another piece that played in, and I'm going to jump up to the board here again. We've been working on technology outcomes by the grade band, and this is our working sheet. So you can see down at the bottom the different grade bands, and there's one for each school, and I'm not sure if I've shared this detailed one yet, and it's they haven't started plugging in, but we have the different grade bands down there, and so each building is going to get to determine who does what at what grade level. For example, and I have this one pulled up at middle school. In 1.5, the computational thinker, so the student can collect data and identify relevant data sets, basically having them have a working knowledge of spreadsheets and Excel type programs. So that introduction is in the 6-8. So who's going to do that? Is it the math teacher? Is it a science teacher, or is it a computers class? And each building is going to be able to select this based off of the strengths of their staff. And it could look different, in each school, and that is okay. It's just who's taking ownership of this one. And so this is just an example. When we talked about this at the 9-12 level, not a fear, but if we take away that technology credit, everything falls back then on core teachers that's in here, because that is truly the only thing we can say is consistent. And so there's a few of them that they thought, however those kids are getting their technical credit, they can take on these pieces. We feel like with the individual graduation plan, since the technology credit is not required by the state, if a kid, if they had multiple high schools during their high school career, if they're behind in credits for another reason, maybe they've been in foster care or have another situation going on, we can go ahead and waive that as it is. And so we feel like we want to keep the rigor and relevance where we have it. And so we did put select, it's option B on the chart that's on the back page, but I went ahead and wrote it actually in the report. Back up here to the report. So yeah, this would start with the class of 2028. So you'll see them, they won't this year, but next year they'll have 2 different sets in their handbook. And so 4.5 units of English language arts, 3 science, 3 math, 1 health and PE, 3 social studies, Kansas history, none of that changed. We added in the STEM, as that was a requirement from the state. The fine arts, not a change. Financial literacy, not a change. Technology, not a change.
So I asked what classes, last meeting, I asked what classes would qualify as the
On the
technology.
technology, we have it written really broad, so it's basically any that fall under, like Barbara Bergmeyer's schedule, Rhonda Deerhan's
You're
schedule.
gonna have to give me more.
I will.
I don't know what that.
No, I will. So I'm giving you the 2 departments, but right now we have graphic design, photo imaging, media, webpage. We do have some online opportunities, like if a kid is really interested in coding or computer programming or applications.
Okay,
So,
that was more my question is still what qualifies that? And are we approving this because we want to retain a department, or is it because we want them to be exposed to these choices, or what is?
There was two main reasons. One, it was the exposure of more the literacy piece,
Okay,
computer literacy. And I'm not talking just operating a machine, but rather the support they're giving to the IPS of that kid being able to go out and
operate in a business setting, I mean.
yeah, and sell themselves to an employer or share their story, what they have to offer confidently. And then the other piece was this. Without that credit, everything here under 912, it falls on to the core teachers.
Well, it would be
And-
interesting to know kind of how those are being handled across all the grade levels, because I was sharing with my student today that, well, how did you become such a good typer? I said, well, we took 3 years of it in middle school. And the look on her face was quite aghast.
If there's a kid today.
But
if
there's
a
not
kid
that rigor, and so I am interested.
I know if there's a kid today that can't type, they're not very good texters.
I don't know.
No, I'll be able to type with their thumb.
That's different on a computer.
I am interested in how that looks across the district, because, in 6th grade, I don't know that how my student received that would be very unclear to a parent.
And that's like, here, I'll pop to the bottom here. you know, understanding some of the basic keyboarding and stuff was put in here.
But if they're not doing it, do
correct.
you know what I'm saying?
So this was built and this is their year to decide who's gonna take ownership, because we have some places where someone thinks someone else is doing
Doing
it
it.
and they're not.
Okay,
And so they have to take ownership for it.
okay, great. We'll circle back.
Yeah, we will let you know, where they end up, and
Otherwise,
this will
I'll be
be,
having a
within a
keyboarding
year.
lesson at my home if anyone would like to come participate.
and you know, we start handwriting in K2 for 7 through 5.
Mhm.
And we start the keyboarding in 3-5 but they're not, I don't even think their hands are big enough.
I agree. In third grade,
to-
they're not.
Well, and by the time they get to middle school, just as they grow, I mean, they can handle more, but we need that accountability of who's gonna take it on, who's going to help with that. So they are proficient on it, and it is true,
We're gonna have
I'm
like,
doing
I
the
guess,
thumb thing,
I
but
guess
that
my, also
doesn't,
my
that
thinking
doesn't
is,
help us. And
if we're
neither
gonna
does
have this
this
accountability
when
at
it
the high
comes to
school,
handwriting.
you know, if
Because
we're
the
gonna,
kids start
no.
from the bottom
Yeah.
instead of the top.
If we're gonna have
So-
this accountability at the high school, we probably need to look just where is that accountability at the middle school and lower levels, so. Okay,
And then this 2 assets of post-secondary, we're not worried about that. We could find 2 for all of our kids. Everybody had kind of something different. We just are gonna have to put it on their IPS, not a problem. We already did the CPR part, in health class. And then the FAFSA offering, I never checked where we ended up, but the work we did in October, we had a really good overall rate at both of our high schools across the state, so that was well received, so.
So, any other questions? I'm certain Jacqueline and team would like.
You don't have
If
to approve
possible,
tonight,
they don't
you
have
can
to-
wait till next month. If there's more questions you want me to get, we would need to by next month so they can in August start, just when they have that first fall conversation with the parents and of the 8th graders next year, they can start talking about their plans, so. And just a reminder, I think I had 72 out of the 80 seniors district-wide had already met all of this.
plan B.
And had met that STEM requirement. And our 8, you know, just a couple adjustments and they would have got it, so. Yes.
Well, I would like to make a motion to approve the graduation requirements as presented in option B for the class beginning 2028 as presented. Second. Motion second to accept as presented. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you. Your team for your work. Next item is to set the special meeting date, as already previously discussed, to discuss property and casualty insurance policy for June the 26th at 6 p.m. Everyone. Sunday. Yes, no credits. Works for me. Works well for you. Okay. And you can make a motion for that?
That's awfully, we season for you.
I usually try not to travel out on Monday. I hate leaving on Monday.
Okay, so you could accommodate. I just know that it is your literal harvest. It is your literal harvest.
Yeah, so, I mean.
You could accommodate your
Generally, Monday
schedule.
night would be the best.
Okay,
So my wife, she can go without me.
Right. Well, it seems like it works, so make a motion to set a special meeting on June the 26th at 6 p.m.
second.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Hey, Dusty, since they made a motion approved, they still have to fill out that special meeting thing.
Well, unless you want to set the agenda tonight.
No,
No,
we'll have to fill out that deal because you won't know what the agenda's gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll have
We just
to-
set the date. but in time, but until you know exactly what the agenda is going to be.
They establish due notice.
Yeah.
All right, then that moves us to the next item, which is the boundary change request from District USD 224. So we have information in our packet and then also Mr. Padigan's presentation earlier this evening. So I guess we'll open it up for discussion. The board.
I don't have any opposition to this change. Like the trade. I don't have any opposition either, and if it's as easy as this, if it were to switch up and they wanted to annex back into. If it's as easy as a vote, I think. And then it came down to it, so I would not have any opposition.
Are you talking about which proposal, like the track 1, track 3, or are you talking both of them, or?
So in my
When you say-
conversations with Art, the soup over there, was their board didn't take any formal action. The first step would be to see if you even had any interest or if it was a hard no, and then it would proceed from there. So not actually any, they just wanted to know,
Whether
was it even a possibility, a potential possibility?
So their board has contacted you.
No.
Their superintendent and one of their board members, and Mark met with me. But their board, my understanding is, has not taken formal action, but asked their soup to contact me to see if you had any interest at all. So they knew if whether or not it would be worthy to continue proceeding down the path of considering it, is my understanding of what their desire is.
Could we just go ahead and approve the swapping of both of them, so we're done with it, or do we wait for, see what they
I
say?
think it would have to come back, that there has to be an agreement to be, that they would prepare. I don't know if that's where you're at.
And this was the first time I've seen any of this too, so I haven't, just to be fair, I haven't, not sure it's fine, but have not dug into it.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced, I'm not for sure that I've got a reason why we should do it.
That's from what I understand is if we don't do it, they can do it anyway.
Not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily.
State.
That's how
they did it before. Yeah, but
Absolutely,
my thing, what is the reason for doing it? So that so he can stay on the school board, or what is the reason for doing it?
So the kids can stay in their school district.
Well, I understand that, but that, to me, I mean, that's the what you take when you move, I mean.
My concern
So,
would be that.
so they move, so we're supposed to change our boundaries because they decide to move to the family farm? Is that,
Well, and it was there
is that a good enough
prior.
reason for us to do that?
No, but I
I'm just asking, I'm not saying yay or nay, but I'm asking what, I haven't seen a reason why yet.
We'll see. So from my perspective, it's not gonna really cost us anything. And when they're 6 miles from the Clifton Pike grade school and 18.5 miles from us, that seemed like pretty reasonable. To me, it's just, it doesn't hurt us. My concern, however, is are we trading a house for a house? Because even we're making a permanent decision for the district's longevity, not a short-term decision for this specific situation. So we are giving up a home that a family could reside in that would potentially send their children in districts. And if we're not retaining, if we're not having another residence, then it would not be advantageous for us to give up a home. And from what I understand with this paragraph right here, is that we are trading, and correct me if I'm wrong, farm ground with a home or a farm ground with a home.
That is a trade, but I think the value of that is not defined. And I think that, from what I understand, is part of the question potentially that you're mentioning, or you're asking. In this case, just the swap of one for another. And maybe I'm reading into that. Maybe I'm reading into your statement wrong than your
your presentation.
But again, I think my understanding was not necessarily an actionable decision. It was just more of a, are you even interested in considering a proposal? Was my understanding of what Art asked of me to bring to you. Not a yes or a no necessarily, but are you at all interested? Because yeah, you're right, Paige, you'd want to go and see, look up the valuation, compare the household properties. What I'd be asking board attorney, hey, what does precedent mean? And if we do it now, does this
I know
set
in
precedents to have to do it?
many other
Yeah.
situations, the state has not just rubber stamped these situations because it opens up a can of worms of, well, the boundary is fluid then, and then if this person moves in and you can just willy-nilly your boundaries. And the state is not necessarily, from my previous knowledge of other districts, it's not as fluid as it was in previous decades.
We'll never gain the students, though.
We won't gain those particular students,
Right.
but then you're also permanently giving up students that could potentially live there. Then you don't, I'm just saying that there's,
I mean, it does
this
have
is not
impact
an
long term.
immediate,
I
it's a
mean,
long-term
it does
impact
have
on the
impact.
district, not an immediate impact too, but.
So I'm not opposed to it. I'd be willing to at least get more information from the other district and see what we think. That's not saying that we're absolutely gonna vote yes, because obviously that would be a full vote discussion, but I think we have to move forward with the discussion and find out the values of the houses. We made this trade as a district before, so it sounds like basically they're just asking us to trade back, but then they're also giving us extra land, so I guess that's why it's a nice thing to do. Be nice and be nice.
Like it shows on this paper, the tax evaluation on 1 and 3 are pretty much identical. We're gaining on the second, on 2 and 4, we'd be gaining.
Is that blue line, is that river? Right, on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there well rights on that? Because that might be more valuable than.
Yes, irrigated land is a higher valuation. We get more as a school district for irrigated land.
And I'd be happy to look into or investigate or collect whatever.
I think we
you
need
guys-
more information,
I'd say it sounds to me like,
but their board hasn't
We're
looked at it
open.
either.
but we need more information, so.
What would you guys like? I mean, I would assume we'd want to confirm with whoever this other property owner is to make sure.
Mhm.
I know there have been in previous years. The 224 board hasn't always had a working relationship with 379, so I guess I'm more interested in what 224. Because they haven't even brought it to their board yet.
Their board discussed it was last week was my understanding,
Okay,
but didn't take formal action. That's my understanding from their superintendent.
okay.
I think the thing that I would be curious about with the residents, kind of the trading of residents, I mean,
Okay.
we have. There's a home with space for 5 children in it that we're giving up. What is this other house that we're trading for? Is it a 2-person home, or is it a space where kids could be potentially living that would be in our district? Like, that would be my question, I think, my biggest question. What's the trade-off as far as that goes? Yeah, I'm with Linda. I am not opposed, but I would like to have a little bit more information.
Anything else you guys want to know? Dusty, anything with precedents that we need to consider?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I don't think so. I mean, because there's no right to do it. And you're not establishing any right to do it. Now you always gotta answer the question, well, why did you do it when Tatican wanted to
Right.
do it, but you're not gonna do it now? Yeah, how do you feel about answering that question? Well,
Different times, different people.
we feel like we made a mistake back then, or, wish we wouldn't have, or, whatever, but I mean, you're not establishing precedent in the sense that we think a legal precedent, well, you did it, for them, why aren't you doing it now? But you certainly, absent establishing precedent, you do open up the
Right, because
The-
now this other person wants to draw this line here, and we want to go to this district.
yeah, I mean, this one to me is somewhat unique and given our earlier discussion tonight relative to out of district students and everything else, I mean, clearly the only issue here is somebody who is involved in education up there and wants to continue to serve on the board. I mean, so you got to get a pretty specific set of facts to ever have this issue even come up, because the other 98% of the time, if somebody living in this house,
They would just apply for. out of
they would
district.
apply, yeah, they go for out of district.
Unless they want
transfer
the
and they're
school
gonna
bus
get
to pick them up, because that was a previous issue with
Yeah.
224 about school buses being allowed to pick up students who wanted to be out of district.
Right, so I mean, you're
So-
right, you could have a busing issue there, but anyway, long answer to your question, I don't think precedent is gonna be binding as much as just opening up the can of worms if there is one.
That was gonna be my statement on this, the students still have the opportunity to attend a different school.
Yeah.
That if they chose not to, do we want to send a bus to that corner of the county? Because if they're in district, that'll be our responsibility. Or is that?
We were picking up out of
We were
district.
actually up there anyway.
Right on that. It's at 24th, I think,
Yeah.
at Frontier or something, but. We kind of cover every corner already, so.
But my viewpoint is that I don't think it's as an easy an answer as just a swamp. It has bigger implications than that. That's my opinion as well.
I will say I'm happy to see that they offered to swap and didn't just ask to be that. It was nice of them to go out and get that information and give that option. I think that was a nice and big kind of go out there.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we want more information. Is that consensus?
I also feel like 224 should have a consensus on their board, because we don't know how they feel about it either. So I kind of feel like we need more information from their school board. Because the board should be asking us for the swap.
Well, I think that's part of it, right? The next thing would be that there'd
That's
be
my
an
understanding.
official proposal from the
Right.
board to ours before we would have to act on anything.
Kind of sounds like they didn't want to take the time to go through the steps if we were absolutely opposed. Yeah, so.
Okay. More information, bring it back. Moves us on to next meeting topics, which is district insurance. We've already talked about that. Obviously, we have that coming up at our special board meeting. We just set out of district student policy. Talked about that at length also at the end of the meeting. So we'll have that to discuss next month as well. Future agenda items, staff compensation. Obviously be talking about negotiations and some of the things that we've been discussing in those meetings. Lots of things, yeah, just Mr. Nelson outlined coming up in the preceding months, so in the upcoming months. Anything else anybody wants to add at this point for future agenda items? Okay, All right, well, then that moves us to the executive session of our meeting. So we'll take just a couple minute break and then we'll come back for the executive session.
All right, you're in.
Oh. Oh, I was gonna say 20.
The early graduates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Um, Okay, so the first item is student matters. However, we do not need an executive session for that item. However, we'd like to make a motion to approve the early graduation requests as long as students have successfully completed 25 credit hours.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Now we'll go into executive session. I move we go into executive session to discuss negotiations pursuant to the negotiations exception under KOMA. The open meeting will resume at, let's go 8:00 PM in this room. Executive session will include the board superintendent.
Second.
All those in favor? Carries 7-0.
Now,
Move we extend for an additional 10 minutes. Second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Really hurt.
All right, we're extending for additional 5 minutes. We'll come back at 8:18. Second in favor, 7-0. Motion carries.
Open and they have.
8:18. I don't know. All right, we're moving on to the personnel section. So we have the personnel report. Questions about any of those items listed?
I move to approve the personnel report, including supplemental updates and temporary summer employments as presented.
Second, motion is taken to approve as presented. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carried 7-0.
I move to adjourn.
Those in favor of adjourning, motion carries 7-0.